All right, guys. I wanted to thank you all for coming to the game night tonight. We're gonna play some West End games, Star Wars D6, some classic Star Wars, and we got a new player for us. She said her name is KK. Can I see your character sheet, KK, just to see what kind of character you're playing?
Certainly. Here you go.
All right, let me see here. It looks like you're playing Rey Skywalker. I explicitly said, I don't want anyone being related to uh any legacy type characters. I don't really this isn't cool. I explicitly said not to do that. You can't be Rey Skywalker.
Oh, well, you see, she's not actually a Skywalker. She's actually related to Emperor Palpatine. She just assumes the Skywalker name, but she's a granddaughter of Emperor Palpatine.
That's worse. That's not better. That's worse. That- That's terrible. That's absolutely awful. I hate that even more. Looking at your character sheet, you didn't even write any die codes actually either. You just wrote the bestest for everything. Uh, can you please write actual die codes? I don't even know what original template you use. Like every ability and skill just says the bestest. That's not acceptable.
But Rey is the bestest at everything.
How's it going, guys? John, the Basic Expert here, and we are back to talking about West End games, Star Wars D6. And in particular, we're going to talk a bit about force powers. I did the whole little Rey bit in the beginning thing because honestly, that's one thing that really bothered me with the prequel trilogy or the sequel trilogy is that the force powers are of Rey are just make no sense. Same with Kylo Ren's, and I mean, it's not like Lucas didn't screw it up with midichlorians, anyways. But we're going to talk about force powers in this week's episode of our continued deep dive into West End Games Star Wars D6. I'm still loving this game, and I'm actually running the play-by-post on the Gilded server, which I haven't been able to dedicate as much time to as I'd like, so apologies to the guys playing in that group. But trying to get Atomic Punk and Cowpunchers done with all this OGL stuff going on just took precedence over anything else. So I need to apologize to all of you because I've kind of neglected these videos for a while, and I know people really like them. They really want to see more people talk about different games, especially now. And West End Games Star Wars D6 and the D6, the open D6 system, which it has evolved into, is a system that is definitely probably a very viable alternative to people in the 5e sphere, because this is definitely more of a story game than your dungeon crawling D&D type game. So it's definitely more focused on like story, narrative, and really taking the role of your character than just being like gutter hero that gets killed by a dirty knife from a kobold in a dungeon, like what classic D&D is. So we're going to talk about force powers and the force in this video. We're going to just cover it really quick, and hopefully you enjoy it, learn something, and continue to pique your interest in this game. I think it's a really fun, great game, and I think a lot of people will get a lot of enjoyment out of it, especially with the way I think the Star Wars IP currently is. It's obviously not in a very good place, and I've said many times on Twitter and in my videos that I think if you were to take this game and run a Star Wars game, you could tell a better story than I think Disney has told with their handling of the property. Mandalorian Season 1 was pretty good. Season 2, not as great. Boba Fett was kind of awful. I haven't watched, I just don't care anymore about watching Disney Star Wars, so I haven't watched that one with Diego Luna, Andor. I haven't watched Andor yet, so I just don't care at this point. But I do care about this because this here feels like Star Wars to me, and to prove that point, I want to read a section from the book here that kind of talks about force powers and whatnot. So this is background on page 68 of the physical book. Background: the Force and the Jedi. From lifelessness came life. From dead matter came spirit. With life came perception, the perception of beauty and ugliness, serenity and fear. The Force grew strong as life grew stronger. Life is the universe's way of perceiving itself. The Force is a strength of its perception. As life grew, evolved, became more sophisticated, there came intelligence, and with it, the capacity for understanding. Intelligent beings questioned the universe, and when they were clever enough to ask the questions in the right way, the universe answered. The Force became stronger, more sophisticated as intelligence spread and sapiens' knowledge of the universe deepened. So I just think that's such a cool, interesting way of kind of explaining the Force as it pertained to the original trilogy, because to me, that's what West End Games Star Wars D6 does a fantastic job of doing, is capturing how the Force feels within these original movies here. Because in my mind, these original films are kind of a low magic setting, whereas the prequel films and the Disney sequels are like a high magic setting. If we're going to compare it to like a fantasy sort of thing, the Force powers we see that Luke and Obi-Wan use are very minimal. At most, the most powerful is telekinetic powers, of being able to move things with their mind, essentially, with the powers of the Force, or little Jedi mind tricks, right? And it seems like, Luke uses the Force to fight and whatnot. Like, it obviously enhances his senses to a degree, but we maybe see like one or two ridiculous Force jumps in the original trilogy. I always think of when Luke kind of does a Force jump out of the carbon freezing thing, to jump out to when Vader tries to push him in to freeze him. He jumps out. So we kind of see that there, but it's not this all over the place, like fancy twirling lightsabers everywhere. Like, I know some people love the choreography of the sequel of the prequel trilogy, and I mean, to a degree, there is some athletic prowess going on, and it is good choreography, but it just doesn't fit right to me. It just looks absurd and ridiculous to me personally. And people explain it like, oh, well, they're using the Force to like predict their opponent's movements, so that's why they're able to get all fancy and whatnot. But like, Luke is supposedly the most powerful Jedi yet to come, and like, he doesn't fight that way. So in the original trilogy, at least, and Vader doesn't fight that way either. So I like the more subdued sort of tone that the original trilogy has, and these rules very much express that. So let's talk about Force powers, how they work in this game, and what it means to be a Force user, as well as how the Force is available to everyone in the game in a very limited capacity. So let's talk about that. So to kind of cover this, let's recap some things that we already know, and the book recaps this as well. So every character starts with one Force point. You can use a Force point to double the die code when you are making a skill check, and this is what I mean by having every character has Force powers available to them. So if you are in a situation where you really want to make sure that what you're about to do is going to succeed, you can roll, you can tell the referee, I want to use my Force point. There's stipulations involved with using the Force point. So if you are doing wrong if you're using Force to do wrong, you are probably not going to get that. You're not getting that Force point back, and you're going to get a dark side point. Too many dark side points, your character is going to become an NPC and controlled by the referee, and could potentially become a recurring villain, let's say, for the party as they continue their adventures of the ship crew, whatever kind of adventure that you're running. Being unheroic, so that could be something where you're not doing evil, but you're not doing something heroic either. You're trying to maybe save your own hide, right? Like, I want to use my Force point to double my die code so that I can escape from the stormtroopers. Like, that's not good. That's not necessarily bad either. I mean, it's good for you, but it's not in line with, I guess, the light side of the Force. And then there's being heroic. When you are heroic, like, let's say I'm going to use the Force points to save the children from the burning spacecraft over there. I really want to make sure I get those kids out. You will probably get your Force point back, and you could earn more depending on how heroic it is. So there's lots of different ways that every character can use Force points. So, and I kind of like this idea. It melds with this idea of the original trilogy that the Force is everything and in everything, not this stupid midichlorian thing that, like, oh, well, to use the Force, you just have to have the right genetics to do it. That always irked me when I saw that, because what caught my attention, what made me what inspired me as a kid watching the original trilogy is how it seems like the Force is in everyone, in everything, and everyone can use the Force to even to some limited degree, even if they're not aware of it or not. Because the Force is in everything. And sure, I guess this still kind of jives with the midichlorian thing, that those that are kind of unaware are not, they're unaware because their midichlorian count is so low. But to me, it's just a silly plot point that was created. I liked the more mystical aspect, which again, this book does a bang up job of simulating and emulating. So yeah, those are the 3 ways that you can use force points generally, and it's going to be up to the referee to decide if it's for doing wrong, if it's unheroic and neutral essentially, and if it is being heroic. Kind of like the law, neutral, and chaos alignments in D&D. I guess you could liken it to that a little bit as well. So definitely you have to keep that in mind when you're using your force points, because you might not get them back even when that adventure ends. When the adventure ends, if you use them neutrally or an unheroic way or a heroic way, you should at least get that one force point back, maybe more, if you're being heroic. If you're going to use it to do wrong, something that would be generally wrong, then that's in the purview of the referee, and I would encourage players to, whatever ruling the referee gives, you must accept that. So keep that in mind. As to when and how you want to use your force points. All right, so let's talk about, let's say you roll up a character that has force powers. You want to play a force user character beyond just using your abilities to use your force points to double your die code. You want to actually have specific force powers like you see in the films. The West End game Star Wars D6 game presents kind of a problem in that regard, which I like. This might turn off a lot of people, but again, this is very much keeping in line with the original trilogy and how the Jedi are portrayed, which is pretty much non-existent within that original trilogy. As far as we know, like if you do not pay attention to any of the later stuff, because this book is just focused on the original trilogy, and they had to create source books, which would later become the genetic starting material of the expanded, what is now known as Legends, but the expanded universe. The West End games created much of that lore, and so they're operating under the assumption in both the rules and the source book that finding a Jedi Master is going to be quite difficult. If you want to advance your skills, if you want to learn more, you're going to have to train to be a Jedi, and the book is pretty clear and explicit in laying that out. It's on page 68. It starts with that, and so it kind of gives you some different options as to perhaps how you could go about it. So, for instance, gives the example that maybe someone who is force sensitive, if you're playing a character that is force sensitive, maybe there's an NPC out there that you can find who was a Jedi, who was a Padawan, who was a student in the Jedi Academy, but never completed, and they escaped. So they might have some ability to get you somewhere as far as advancing your training in force skills, but they're not going to they're not going to be able to get you to the level of a Jedi Master. You're not going to find another Yoda, another Obi-Wan Kenobi out there that can really get you to that maximum level of your potential, like what Luke Skywalker had. And players need to be okay with that, and they need to a big degree understand that as well. Another option it gives is that there's perhaps other mystical traditions of the Force out there that players could seek out. And I think this is actually very cool. For instance, you could have the players, it could be part of a whole quest, a whole adventure line that you could feed your players, where they are going out to, one of the players in particularly maybe hears of ancient relics or an alien civilization that is out there that is maybe somewhat untouched by the Empire or in hiding from the Empire or something of that nature, but has knowledge of the Force and can allow that character to at least learn something. It might not be from the traditional Jedi texts and teachings, but it is something of the Force. And as a student in training under the Force, under this era of Star Wars, where the rebellion is going on and Jedi are rare, they've already been exterminated, 30-something years prior to this, 20-something years prior. So, I mean, you're going to have to take what you can get. But I think this is cool, as it can lead to a lot of different plot points and adventure hooks that you can feed players, especially if one or multiple of them are Force users and they want to learn how to better use their Force powers. So I 100% think that this works. And quite honestly, if we're going to be honest, I think that the low magic setting and the way the rules function, having even minimal Force powers is going to be quite powerful. You're already quite a leg up above any other kind of character, in my opinion, as far as what you're able to do. Being able to have, when we'll get into the different skills that are available, but being able to have these superhuman abilities, superpowered, even mildly superpowered abilities, will give you a leg up. Even if you're not a Luke Skywalker or a young Obi-Wan Kenobi or an Ahsoka Tano or any of those kinds of characters, you will still be pretty powerful in comparison to someone who doesn't use the Force. That's at least my opinion, as far as running the game and what I see as I read the rules and play them out in my head. So with that said, let's talk about the Jedi Code. It does give you a Jedi Code here on page 69 of the rulebook. It says, and it has a Yoda quote: "The Jedi must have the deepest commitment the most serious mind. There is no," so then it goes on with the code here, "there is no emotion, there is peace, there is no ignorance, there is knowledge, there is no passion, there is serenity, there is no death, there is the Force." And it says, to use the Force, the Jedi must remain at harmony with it. To act in dissonance depletes his power or risks you turning to the dark side. So you have to follow the code. That code, if you are going to be a Jedi, you're going to have a very strict code. And the rules actually lay that out, that if you are a Jedi user, like, you can't just, like, the smuggler can be like Han Solo and shoot first. But the Jedi is not going to be able to behave in that way necessarily. So that is definitely something you need to keep in mind. And should you, as a player who is a Force user trying to be a Jedi or trying to learn to be a Jedi, and who has these Force powers, and you feel the tug and pull of the light and dark side, that is going to be up to the referee to often judge your actions as to what you do. Is what you're doing going to lead you towards the dark side or the light side? And that could lead to dark side points. So that is something to keep in mind. You are going to be more powerful, as I stated before, but with that power comes this tug and pull between the light and the dark. And where does your character fall into that? So that is going to be could be a big role-playing part of your character too, I think, which is always fun to give fodder for that sort of stuff as you play the game. So let's say you're able to find someone who is able to teach you something, and the game does offer rules for training in the Force. So it says there are 3 Force skills: control, sense, and alter. Unlike other skills, they are not governed by any attribute. An untrained character has no control, sense, or alter codes. An untrained character does not have and cannot use Force skills. Only when he receives training in a Force skill can he use it. The first skill a character learns when he trains in the Force is control. After 1 week of intensive study, he gains the skill. His starting skill code is 1D, so not great. Learning a Force skill at 1D does not cost any skill points. Masters usually teach pupils control first, then sense, then alter. When the master decides the time is ripe, which could be 1 week later, 1 week after the pupil learns control, or after 7 years of apprenticeship and sweeping out the temple, he teaches the pupil the next skill. Each skill takes 1 week of intensive training to learn, so dedicated training. When learned, each skill begins with a code of 1D. A master can only teach what he knows. If he does not know a skill, he may not teach it, and it also assumes that if he only has 3D in control, he can't teach you anything above 3D. Like, once you get to 3D, you're at his level, he has nothing more to teach you. And if that's the only skill he has, is I can only teach you how to control the Force, that's because that's all I know. Once you get to 3D, you're going to have to find a new master at some point, somewhere, who can maybe teach you some of the other skills that you may need to know. As long as a character has a master, he may spend skill points he earns during the game to increase his Force skills. However, he can never increase a skill that is still at 0 by spending skill points. So you must find that master to get you to that 1D to get things started. A master can only teach a pupil to his own level, as I said. Example, a master has a control skill of 5D plus 1. The pupil may spend skill points to increase his own control skill up to 5D plus 1 at the normal cost. So then you can read the rules on gaining skills, but that's essentially what I had already explained. A pupil can increase a force skill above his master skill code, but doing so costs double the normal number of skill points. So if you want to advance, it's going to start taking more skill points to do so. So it gives an example here. Let's read it. The master's control skill is 5d plus 1. Increasing a skill from 5d plus 1 to 5d plus 2 would normally cost 5 skill points. Since 5d plus 2 is higher than the master's skill, the pupil would have to spend 10 points instead. And I kind of like that because it's sort of like you're just learning things, you're trying them out. It's going to cost more resources, more time in order to advance that skill to something beyond something so mystical and occulted, essentially, beyond what your master can teach you, because now you're in the unknown. You don't really know what you're doing, so of course it's going to take a bit more time, a bit more study, a bit more rigorous study in order to advance that skill beyond that of whoever your teacher is. Let's talk about you as a player, whether you want to train someone else. So say you are a Force user, you start to gain some abilities as you've trained with your master, and let's say you've gotten to the point where you're beyond that, and let's say another player in your party, in your group, in your adventuring group, wants to learn some Force skills. There are some rules for taking on pupils. So characters who begin with Force skills can take on pupils themselves, thereby becoming masters. However, some rules limit them. A character currently studying with a master cannot take on a pupil himself. So you cannot be studying under a master and decide to take on a student yourself. A master may only have one pupil at a time. A master may not teach Force skills to a character who has any dark side points. It would be wrong to teach Force skills to someone so tainted. A master may only teach Force skills to a character who agrees to abide by the Jedi Code. So the smuggler character who says, hey, that Force stuff looks like it'd be useful for shooting people in the face, the Jedi is probably going to be like, you don't have the right mentality for the right attitude that we're looking for to teach someone Force powers. I can't teach you. It'd be wrong to do so. So let's talk about some of the Force skills that characters have as well. I think we'll close that out with this. This is going to be a very simple video covering these topics here. So I like the way West End Games laid this out. So it says the first thing that a player would learn is to control how to use the Force within themselves, and how to master the Force within themselves. They're not really concerned with the external situations in regards to the Force. The Force is used to control that which is within you. This could be your emotions and just how to I believe control is used later to control lightsabers as well, because the lightsaber weapon is kind of an unwieldy, strange weapon that not many people can just pick up and swing around. You need to have Force control in order to do so. The next skill that a character learns is to be able to sense the Force, and this is to be able, as the book describes, to sense the ebb and flow of the Force around them. And that's generally the second skill you learn after control. Oftentimes the two are kind of like interlinked in some cases as well. And finally, the Jedi learns to alter the distribution of the Force. This means that he can move objects with his mind, for instance. So like with Luke making his lightsaber come to him when he's about to get eaten by the snow creature. He can do to the bodies of others what he can do to himself, and he can accelerate healing. He can change the contents of other people's minds. This is not the droids you're looking for. That would be under the alter abilities. So, and there's the rules here as well for combining all three skills. It gives a lot of creative freedom for players to sort of, if you have more than one skill, I want to combine control with alter. I want to combine control with sense, or sense with alter, and it kind of gives some examples here as well, some difficulty numbers. It's on page 70 of the book. I encourage you to check it out. For time's sake, we're not going to go over all of that. But what it does give you here is it does give you, as you go beyond page 70, gives you rules for lightsabers. And it says any character may use a lightsaber as a melee weapon using its normal damage rating of 5d, which is very powerful. However, lightsabers are very rare weapons. They cannot normally be purchased, but are rare as objects dar. Obtaining a lightsaber might be the climax of an adventure. When a character with a control skill uses a lightsaber, he adds his control skill dice to the damage code when he hits. Example, a character has a control skill of 3d plus 1. When he hits with his lightsaber, he rolls 8d plus 1 to determine its damage, which is insane. In addition, Whenever a character with the sense skill uses the lightsaber to parry in hand-to-hand combat, he may use either his sense skill or his melee parry skill. It says see page 16. When using the parry, sense is a reaction skill. When a lightsaber used to parry a hand-to-hand attack, the melee weapon may be destroyed or the attacker may be injured. So obviously the lightsaber just cuts through anything. A character with a sense skill may use his lightsaber to parry blaster bolts, which is cool. See page 16. He rolls his sense skill and adds the result to the fire's blaster difficulty number. Melee parry cannot be used for this purpose. A character who parries a blaster bolt can try to reflect it back to its firer or on another target. This is considered two uses of the sense skill, so skill codes are reduced accordingly. The first use increases the fire's difficulty number. If the fire misses, the lightsaber wielder makes a second sense skill roll, determine the range. Just as the lightsaber wielder were firing that type of blaster, the range determines the difficulty number for the second sense skill roll. So you're going to determine the range. You're going to remove a die, because every time you use a range and an action beyond the original action, you remove a die code. And the range will give you, as if you're shooting that weapon, if you're trying to reflect it back at the shooter or at something else, you need to determine the range, and that will be the target number. Do your sense skill again, and then if you're successful, then boom, they shoot you, you reflect it back at them. Or let's say you're trying to maybe be a good Jedi and you don't want to kill the person shooting at you. There's a blaster door there. You reflect it back and want to aim for the control panel for the door to close it, so they're locked out of the room away from you or something like that. So that would be an example of that. But you need to determine the range. That would give you the target number for your second sense skill use. And then roll your d6s to see if you succeed or not. So I think that's pretty cool. It's very elegant, very simple, and I think adds to a very cinematic style game of force powers here. So the book goes on and gives you lots of other examples of various force powers. There's control pain. These are control powers. It gives you remain conscious, hibernation trance, accelerate healing, control escape, detoxify poison, control disease, absorb dissipate energy, and then you have some sense powers. So receptive telepathy, magnify senses, life sense, instinctive astrogation, which could be very helpful. And then you get some control abilities, control plus sense powers. So projective telepathy, farseeing, and then you get some alter powers like telekinesis, injure kill, which, that could not be good. Control plus alter power. So it gives you some examples of how you can combine the various force skills. So under control and alter powers, you have control another person's pain. Again, if you have control and alter, you're able to do to others what you're able to do this to yourself. So if you're able to control the pain in yourself, you can control the pain, physical pain in others. Return to consciousness, accelerate another person's healing, detoxify poison and another, control another's disease, transfer force. And then you have all three together. So control, sense, and alter power. So affect mind. That would be like a Jedi mind trick, I guess. Telekinetic kill, which was probably not a good thing a Jedi would do. So it says warning, a character who uses this skill immediately gains a dark side point. So, keep that in mind. And that's it. That's how force powers work. And I think that it's super elegant. All these force powers that I listed give like target numbers. So Farseeing, for example, which is a control plus sense power, it says the control difficulty number 5, and as modified by proximity, if the user wishes to see the past, add 5 to see the future, add if you wish to see the past, add 5. If you wish to see the future, add 10. So it'll be a target number 10 if you are trying to see the past, target number 15 if you're trying to see into the future. So every ability like that gives you an example of how to use these powers, and I rather like the way they work. They're very again, like a low magic setting that kind of very much fits the vibe and feel of classic Star Wars, classic original trilogy, and I quite like that. So kudos to West End Games, Star Wars D6 for making force powers cool and mystical and interesting, and how I envisioned them as a kid when I was watching the original trilogy before midichlorians and Rey, who's the best to set everything, could be the best to set everything. So If you guys like this video, please like, subscribe, check out the other stuff that I do. I make games too. I recently released Cowpunchers Reloaded, which is like 150, almost 150 pages of cowboy western. It's not Weird West. It's just straight cowboy western role playing. It's a D6 dice pool thing. If you like this, it's very much influenced by this, though it's quite different in a lot of ways too. But it's still like this, a D6 dice pool game. Very simple character creation. Very deadly game, because being shot by a revolver or a lever action rifle is probably not good for your health. But people seem to like it, and it is in the Creative Commons as well. Creative Commons share alike, attribution share alike. So you can take my rules and make adventures for them. You can do Weird West book of my rules. You can take what I've written and run with it. I'd love to see people start building stuff around the rule set that I've created. I'm currently working on a fantasy version using the Cowpunchers rules to do that. I've also released Atomic Punk. There's a second printing because of the whole OGL nonsense that's going on, which is why I released Cowpunchers under their Creative Commons. I had to fix. Well, I didn't have to. Old OGL 1.0a stuff would have been fine. I could have left it as it was, but I wanted to build off of it. And I took this as an opportunity to sort of build the game more to what I sort of envisioned it being originally. I was kind of afraid to do the ideas that I originally had because I wasn't sure how OSR people would take it. OSR is so much like it has to be compatible with old school D&D, which the second printing of Atomic Punk still is. I give you conversion tables, but I created it on a 2D10 system. If you're interested in seeing how it plays, one of my recent streams, I'll have it in the top here as a linked video. I ran Vic, co-host of Natural Ones on Mondays, through a one-shot scenario where I kind of display the rules and how they work. So instead of rolling a d20 for attacks and skill checks, you're rolling 2d10, and it's kind of like Traveler with a 2d6, where you're trying to hit that target, that top of the bell curve, and various modifiers based on range and the weapon and the armor you're using kind of tug and pull back and forth as to whether you're going to succeed or not. So I rather like that as a system. I like building mechanics around bell curves. I think that's really cool. That's one of the reasons why I like Classic Traveler and the 2d6 system. But if you like, Fallout style, post-apocalyptic, atomic punk role-playing that is very old school in feel, then Atomic Punk 2160, the second printing, is available. And when you download it, if you buy it digitally, you will get the old version, which is very BX in nature, and then you get the new version as well. You get 2 PDFs of the same game. Old version, very BX, traditional. The new version, which is BX and this 2D10 hybrid system, you get that. Print on demand is coming soon. It's been kind of a nightmare setting it up. I hate setting up print on demand, especially on Drive-Thru-RPG. It's the absolute worst. Hate doing it, but it will be coming, and I'm working on a hardcover version of Atomic Punk as well. And print on demand for Cowpunchers on Drive-Thru-RPG will be coming soon as well. So keep an eye out for that. If you want to support what I'm doing as well, and beyond just buying the stuff that I make, you can support here on the channel. There should be a link below, as well as on Subscribe Store or on the Guilded server. The Guilded server is a hop in place. Probably got the biggest OSR Guilded server there is. We're running games on there. It's the place to be, so check it out. I think we have over 200 people on that server now, so check it out. Anyways, that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I love talking about this game as a kid that grew up loving Star Wars. This is just like a 12-year-old me's like wet dream as far as the game is concerned. So I've really enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it. More videos to come on this. Maybe we're getting towards the end of this here as far as I want the basics that I want to cover for West End Games Star Wars D6. Interested to hear what you guys would love to see me talk about next. I have the One Ring second edition. I'm contemplating whether or not you guys would like to see me cover that. Coriolis by Free League as well, so 2 Free League games. Or maybe we should go back in time and talk about how it all started and do a deep dive into OD&D, Original Dungeons & Dragons from 1974, pre-supplement one. If you're interested in that, let me know. I'd love to do some research. That one will be a lot more research than Coriolis or the One Ring, but if that interests you, I'll start work on that as well. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know what you think about the video and Force Powers and West End games below. Do you like them? Do you hate them? Tell me what you think. Like, subscribe, share. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video and in the next stream on Monday. Peace out.